Good evening, good morning. Welcome to lesson 4 here at PADM 404, Homeland Security in Practice here at Penn State. I want to try and get these videos going again, just so you have a little bit more of a FaceTime and more of an interaction with me or at least this online environment brings you a little bit more of an in-person feel to this online environment. So just want to start off with announcements. Snowed in. Well, before I get to announcements, I'm snowed in DC. I'm sure most people on the East Coast are snowed in, and you're digging yourself out. So I hope you had some family time, or at least you spent a good time getting your car out or what have you today. So just keep that in mind if you're if you're on the East Coast or in the Northeast corridor. Papers, good. We're getting better on the papers. I'm going through them now. I should have the lesson 2 papers to you by the tomorrow or the day after at the latest, and then I'll start working on the lesson 3 papers. I apologize, I was a little late on that due to a work emergency last week, but I should have those to you, the lesson 2 but in the next couple of days, and lesson 3 within a week after that. They're good. Again, as I've said in a lot of your papers, I think your papers would benefit if you just had 1 to 2 pages of analysis, or 1 to 2 sentences of analysis for each program that you're introducing. For example, again, this paper 3, you had the HSGP, and then you had the Urban Area Security Initiative. Why is the urban area? Why was that implemented? Some people just described it. Some people gave pretty much the Homeland Security website description of it. It's fine, but in reality, what it was to compensate for the higher population, higher risk areas like New York, DC, Chicago, LA, that might not have the same population equation, but certainly have a lot higher of a risk because they're major urban areas. And that's kind of the 1 to 2 sentences that brings that up might just help your papers out. And same thing with Stone Garden and all the other HSGP programs. So just that's what I mean when I say a little bit more analysis onto your papers. And for this paper, OD&I, you'll be talking about OD&I in your lesson 4 paper. Why was the OD&I created? OD&I was created to integrate the intelligence community, disparate intelligence community entities that was made apparent prior to the 9/11 attacks. Simple 1 to 2 sentence analysis that brings that up. So that's that kind of what I mean by papers or more analysis on your papers. I hope that kind of answers a little bit of your questions there. Secondly, review of last week of lesson 3, HSGP. Know this lesson. This will come back pretty consistently throughout the rest of the course. Your final paper will be on HSGP. And when I'm looking for your final papers, I want analysis in your final paper. Your final paper is not going to be an info paper or a set of talking points. It's going to be, what's the HSGP, Homeland Security Grant Program? What are the problems with it? What are the recommendations to fix it? So start getting that in your mindset now. And again, the 3 things we're talking about: the traditional HSGP, which are the grants to the states, and I think we could see the problems in that are pretty relevant when you just put piles of money into the states and say, hey, the candy store's open, bid on what you want, and you see all sorts of troubles. And I think some of the articles we've seen outside are pretty relevant of that, where people are spending money on dog bulletproof vests. Not that dogs are unimportant, but I don't think we should be spending in our fiscal constrained times bulletproof vests. We have all whiz-bang command centers, whiz-bang cameras that really aren't necessary in the Boise, Idaho police department. I think even in the summer, not that I'm taking sides one way or another, but MRAPs in police departments, are they really necessary? I'll let you decide, but that's one of the problems with the HSGP when you just hand out money willy-nilly. Urban Area Initiative, again, that was in response to the lack of per capita spending on major urban areas. Again, and this is still a problem, South Dakota gets more money per person than New York? And where do you think the terrorists are going to attack? Washington gets less than Boise, Idaho, per capita anyway. And the Urban Area Security Initiative was designed to redress that in some ways. And then Stone Garden is the border security issue, and that, again, that's another addition to the HSGP. States like Texas, Arizona, California, they have obviously much more responsibility and much more of a threat in their southern borders. If you looked at the normal HSGP risk analysis, those states wouldn't get more money because they're less populated and those southern areas are less populated. However, that's where a bigger threat is, and the Stone Garden was designed to funnel resources to those border security areas where, again, there's more of a potential threat. So that kind of covers some of the issues we saw in Lesson 3. I just want to preview Lesson 4. Again, we're going to go back to that 9/11 issue and the intelligence community. And I talked about this earlier. Just some of the problems with 9/11 were those watch listing functions. We knew of 2 people that were on terrorist watch lists, and they were not arrested by local law enforcement. They were not stopped by the TSA or the FAA at the time. And they weren't. That information was not shared with other intel agencies. So that's kind of when we're trying to talk about information sharing across the enterprise. That's kind of the genesis of it. One of the 9/11 hijackers was pulled over prior to 9/11, even though he was on a terrorist watch list, because that police officer on the beat did not have that intelligence information, or that database wasn't pushed down to his level. He couldn't make an arrest or have further scrutiny of that person. And that's where some of the fusion centers and some of the other post-9/11 intelligence initiatives are designed to take place. And I'll let you decide whether they're worthy of money and worthy of appropriations. The last thing I'll talk about, and this is your basis of your discussion, is private sector sharing. Some people are against it because the intelligence community should not be sharing with the private sector because one is classified intel, the other is not. But oftentimes, particularly when you're talking about cyber, a lot of the critical infrastructure is run by private institutions. So if there's a cyber attack in a dam in Maine run by this company or company X, you want to make sure that company Y, who runs a dam in California, is aware of how that happened. So that's kind of the advantages or why we want public partnerships. The other advantage is we don't want the private sector to be closed off. And I'll give you an example. Home Depot gets hacked by unnamed terrorists or unnamed criminal organization, and they get hacked. They don't want that information out there. They don't want everyone to know that Home Depot's computers are not secure, and if you shop at Home Depot, you're going to get identity theft. They don't want to know. They don't want to tell people that. But if there's a government public-private partnership that tries to keep things secure, or they have access to secure information, that might help their ability to do business. So that's kind of the genesis of Lesson 4. We've got some time on Lesson 4. We have spring break. We have a week in review. So if there's any issues, please let me know, and I'd be happy again because we have some time to give you an extension. So I look forward to your discussions, and I'll see you in the discussion board.